It's because of Caitlin Clark. When she came into the league, the Indiana Fever were third last in attendance. And then when Caitlin Clark came into the league, they're immediately number one in attendance for the next 2 seasons. And then you look at somebody like Angel Reese, when she came into the league, the Chicago Sky were actually top 3 in attendance the year before she got there. And then when she came in, they're in the bottom 5 in attendance the next couple years. So that's why I say, like, yes, we can give praise to some of these younger players. They have been great. They have a lot of fans who ride.
For more than 2 years, fans argued on social media. Players did interviews, and executives gave careful answers. Yet nobody wanted to say the simplest truth out loud. One player completely changed the WNBA's future. Not a committee, not a slow strategy, but one guard who turned regular games into national events. While boardrooms quietly worried about survival, Caitlin Clark was turning college arenas into must-see television and building an audience bigger than the league itself. Now, after years of avoiding that reality, major networks and league voices are finally admitting what the numbers have been shouting all along. So how did the WNBA go from emergency meetings about staying alive to billion-dollar media talks? And why did it take so long to admit who actually moved the needle? Stick around, because once you see the full timeline, it's impossible to unsee.
Continued to February of 2022. So this was when the capital raise was announced. A capital raise featuring new investors and existing WNBA and NBA owners brought in $75 million that was used to supercharge the WNBA's business growth, including better marketing and more innovation. And this is when we talk about the split, you guys, and why it's very hard for players to get more of a revenue share than what they're asking for.
To understand today, you have to go back to February 2022, when the WNBA was focused on stability, not celebration. That month, the league raised about $75 million by selling a 16% equity stake to outside investors, with ownership split between the WNBA, the NBA, and this new group. On paper, the billion-dollar valuation sounded huge, but behind the scenes it was about survival, keeping operations strong, improving marketing, and making sure teams stayed afloat. Executives weren't talking about global expansion or record-breaking ratings. They were talking about avoiding contraction and staying relevant in a crowded sports market. It was a cautious moment with hopes for progress, but no one was projecting the kind of surge that was about to arrive. At the same time those quiet survival meetings were happening, Caitlin Clark was at Iowa doing something completely different, turning college games into national events. Her deep threes, emotional style, and competitive fire pulled in viewers who had never followed women's basketball before. Ratings climbed, arenas filled, and suddenly people who didn't know a single WNBA roster could still tell you when Iowa was playing. Clark wasn't just putting up big numbers, she was building habits. Fans rearranged their evenings to watch her, and every game felt like a show. Without even trying to fix the league, she was already creating the proof that one star could transform the audience for women's basketball. April 2024 became the turning point. The moment Caitlin Clark's name was called on draft night, the WNBA stopped being a background conversation and became front-page sports news. The Indiana Fever, a team that had been near the bottom of the league in attendance, suddenly became the hottest ticket in the sport. Home games sold out, road games turned into mini tour stops, and fans in every arena wore her college and pro jerseys just to see her play in person. Networks that once slotted WNBA games into quiet time slots began circling Fever matchups on the schedule because they knew, if Clark was on the floor, the numbers would be there. With one draft pick, the league went from "we hope people tune in" to "we know people are watching." That 2022 capital raise suddenly looked very different in hindsight. Money that was originally meant just to stabilize operations and improve basic marketing now had a superstar to build around. Campaigns featuring Clark weren't just promotions, they were events. Merchandise sales skyrocketed, social media views spiked, and coverage from national outlets grew more frequent and more intense. Investors who had expected slow, steady growth were suddenly watching a league that felt like it had been plugged into a higher voltage. Nothing about the actual rules of the game had changed, but everything about the attention around it had. Clark became the piece that turned a survival plan into a growth engine. All of this momentum showed up clearly in the WNBA's new long-term media rights deal. Major partners like Disney Networks, Amazon, and NBC platforms committed serious money over more than a decade, signaling that this wasn't just a short-term experiment. Public comments surrounding the agreement highlighted rising viewership, increased fan engagement, and the undeniable impact of a new wave of stars, front and center among them, Caitlin Clark. These companies weren't just betting on potential. They were reacting to real data. Games featuring Clark consistently delivered. The deal confirmed what fans had been saying for months. The league had moved into a new tier of relevance, and she was one of the main reasons why. If the evidence was so strong, why did it feel like it took more than 2 seasons for some officials and voices around the league to fully acknowledge Clark's unique impact? Part of it comes down to politics and respect. Many veterans spent years carrying the league, competing overseas in the offseason, and advocating for better conditions. It can be uncomfortable to say that a rookie dramatically shifted the financial picture almost overnight. Another factor is messaging. Leagues usually like to present growth as a collective accomplishment, not something tied to a single person. But as attendance records fell, ratings climbed, and media partners linked success directly to her presence, it became harder and harder to maintain that distance. Eventually, the conversation had to catch up with reality. As all this was happening, another important discussion unfolded around the league's proposed new collective bargaining agreement. Reports of potential average and maximum salaries represented the biggest financial jumps in WNBA history, numbers that would have been unthinkable a few years earlier. Instead of universal celebration, some early public reactions framed the offers as deeply unsatisfying. That's when WNBA legend Rebecca Lobo stepped in with an important perspective. She wasn't telling players how to feel about a deal. She was reminding everyone that language matters. From her point of view, describing large increases as something harsh or insulting could risk turning new fans away just as they were beginning to invest emotionally and financially in the league. Her concern was simple. Don't let frustration over negotiations accidentally damage the momentum that was finally building. Lobo's comments connected directly to the Clark effect. When a player draws millions of new eyes to a sport, those viewers arrive with very little background on the long history of pay debates or past frustrations. What they see is a league that is finally growing, games that are finally packed, and players who are visibly becoming more recognizable and better compensated. If the first thing they hear is that these gains are a slap or feel like an insult, some may feel confused or disconnected. That doesn't mean players shouldn't push for what they believe is fair. It means that in the era of viral clips and instant reactions, how they express those concerns publicly can either strengthen fan support or weaken it. And since Clark's popularity is one of the major reasons there's more leverage on the table at all, that connection between players, fans, and messaging has never been more important. One of the clearest ways to see Clark's unique impact is through the attendance comparisons that have been discussed publicly. Before she arrived, the Indiana Fever were near the bottom of the league in attendance. After she joined, they quickly moved to number 1 and stayed there in back-to-back seasons. That's not a normal bump, that's a full rebranding of a franchise in the eyes of fans. At the same time, another highly publicized rookie, Angel Reese, joined a Chicago Sky team that had already been near the top of the league in attendance. In the following seasons, their numbers moved toward the lower end of the standings. Reese brought attention and storylines, but the long-term attendance surge just didn't mirror what was happening in Indiana. That doesn't diminish her talent or her importance to the sport, but it does highlight how unusually powerful Clark's impact has been when you look at who consistently fills arenas. What truly separates Clark in this moment is that her influence doesn't end when the game does. Reports and discussions have noted that even her off-court appearances, like charity events, casual outings, or simple media content, can draw significant interest. People aren't just watching her as an athlete. They're following her as a personality with a story they want to track over time. This creates a different kind of value for the league and its partners. When clips featuring her outperform almost anything else on social platforms, and her jersey consistently ranks near the top in sales, it sends a strong message to sponsors and networks. They aren't just investing in a schedule, they're investing in someone who can bring in viewers who might not watch any other game all year. That's rare, and it's exactly the kind of star power that can shift a league's negotiating position. Before Clark arrived, the WNBA was slowly but steadily trending upward. Ratings were improving, and there was growing recognition of the league's talent. But after she entered the picture, the curve changed. Regular season games featuring the Fever began posting numbers you'd expect from special showcase events. Opponents noticed that whenever Indiana came to town, their own ticket sales jumped. Suddenly, it wasn't just hardcore fans planning around the schedule. Casual viewers started to treat Fever games like can't-miss events. That's the difference between decent growth and something that feels like a breakout. the league's story shifted from "we're slowly building" to "we're one of the most rapidly rising properties in sports." And that shift is a big reason why networks were willing to sign longer, more valuable deals. The exciting part is that this new era isn't just about one name on the back of a jersey. As the Fever grow into themselves, players like Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, Sophie Cunningham, and Lexi Hull are carving out their own lanes. Boston has the potential to be one of the best front-court anchors in the league for years. Mitchell brings established scoring and leadership. Cunningham and Hull add energy, defense, and the kind of hustle plays that turn close games. Clark might be the one who turned every Fever game into a spotlight event, but that spotlight is now giving her teammates a chance to become stars in their own right. If this core stays together and develops, Indiana could become more than just the team with Clark. They could be the franchise that defines this entire era of the WNBA. When you compare the quiet concern of those 2022 meetings to the tone around the league today, the contrast is huge. Back then, people worried about survival and stability. Now, the questions are about expansion, new markets, and international opportunities. Other projects and leagues are trying to tap into the same audience that has rallied around women's basketball, which is the clearest sign that this space is finally being seen as a major opportunity. Clark didn't create that interest alone, but she did compress the timeline. What might have taken a decade of slow, gradual growth accelerated in just a couple of seasons. The WNBA's challenge now is to manage that momentum wisely, supporting all of its athletes, protecting its relationship with fans, and staying honest about the role that a breakout star played in opening these doors. At this point, it's hard to seriously debate whether there is a Clark effect. The attendance numbers, the ratings spikes, the merchandise sales, the media deals, and the way other leagues are reacting all point in the same direction. What started as a college phenomenon turned into a professional transformation that reshaped how executives, sponsors, and fans see women's basketball. The key now is what happens next. Does the league continue to build smartly around this momentum? Do players and leadership find ways to disagree behind the scenes while presenting a unified, positive message in public? Or does frustration over negotiations and attention create fractures that slow things down just as the world is finally watching? Those questions will define the next few years just as much as any box score. So after everything we've seen, from emergency capital raises to sold-out arenas, from cautious language to open recognition, the big question remains: why did it take this long for so many people in power to fully acknowledge how much Caitlin Clark changed the game? Was it politics, respect for veterans, fear of controversy, or just the natural hesitation that comes with putting so much credit on one person? I want to hear your take. Drop your thoughts in the comments and tell me how you think the league should handle this new era. If you made it this far, you're part of the small group who actually cares about the full story behind the headlines. So don't leave without helping this channel grow. Hit like so more fans see this, share this video with someone who's been debating the Clark effect all season, and make sure you subscribe with all notifications on so you never miss the next deep dive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.